morning and welcome to Daybreak. You're watching it live on A News and I'm your host, Nadia Jani, here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. Donald Trump and King Charles toast a historic bonds at White House state dinner. Hezbollah drone strikes target Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon, and Netanyahu claims he's destroyed a Hezbollah tunnel. And Ukraine strikes Russia's oil refinery. Putin says attacks are intensifying on civilian targets. First this morning, Britain's King Charles III has highlighted the importance of the UK's special relationship with the US in a speech to Congress that pointed to the importance of NATO. Later at the state dinner that only wrapped up a few hours ago, he presented the US president with a gift that made a clang. Here's more on that story.
Britain's King Charles is in the US for a high-profile state visit aimed at strengthening ties between the two countries. He arrived at the White House alongside US President Donald Trump, marking the start of several official engagements. The trip comes at a sensitive time, with tensions over the Iran conflict and Washington's criticism of London adding strain to relations. The visit marks 250 years since American independence. Talks were held in the Oval Office with senior officials present, but no details were released. Later, King Charles addressed the US Congress, saying the United Kingdom and the United States remain strong allies committed to democratic values.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we meet in times of great uncertainty, in times of conflict from Europe to the Middle East, which pose immense challenges for the international community and whose impact is felt in communities the length and breadth of our own countries. We meet too in the aftermath of the incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed. Whatever disagreements we may have, we stand united in our commitment to uphold democracy, to protect all our people from harm, and to salute the courage of those who daily risk their lives in the service of our countries.
The day concluded with a state dinner at the White House, where President Trump said the two countries remain united on major security challenges, including Iran's nuclear program.
And we're doing a little Middle East work right now, too, if you might know. And we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent. And we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon. They know that, and they've known it right now very powerfully.
The engagement highlighted unity between the two allies, even as policy differences persist. In a gesture highlighting historical ties, King Charles also presented President Donald Trump with a bell from the World War II-era submarine HMS Trump during the visit.
Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe. And as you saw with that first report there, it's the King Charles and Trump meeting. So King joins Trump for White House banquet and delivers historic Congress speech, is what the BBC is leading with this morning. Now the speech only took place a couple of hours ago, where King Charles was there to present and to highlight a number of different issues, which I'm going to address very shortly. So he addressed Congress first, which was on the Tuesday morning, and said that the UK and US partnership was more important than ever. And here are a couple of takeaways that I just wanted to relay to everyone. As you can see here, these are the pictures of them meeting President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania. Then you've got Camilla and King Charles there, Queen Camilla and King Charles there. And these pictures just show the grand gesture and the state visit that hasn't happened in a number of years. But just quickly on the 5 key takeaways from the Congress speech. King Charles acknowledged of uncertainty. King Charles started his speech by diving straight into the times of great uncertainty that confront both the US and the UK. The next thing was something that the Democrats really enjoyed when King Charles noted the British legal tradition enshrined in the Magna Carta that executive power is subject to checks and balances. He actually received a standing ovation for that, and cheers started on the Democrat side before it went throughout the whole chamber, and that's when everybody stood up and gave an applause. The next thing was a nod to NATO. We know that the US has threatened to leave NATO, so King Charles really wanted to hone in on that and said that NATO and the Transatlantic Alliance, quoting former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, the King spoke of an Atlantic partnership and noted that NATO mobilized in defense of one of its member states was after the 9/11 terror attacks by Al-Qaeda. There wasn't any mention of the Epstein victims, so that's quite a key thing considering his brother Andrew Mountbatten was not mentioned, even though he's very tightly linked to what's been going on in relation to the Epstein victims. And the fifth key thing to come out of that was a touch of royal humour, which actually you're going to see from a number of the reports throughout. King Charles has been there. He was very whimsical at times. He opened with a line from Oscar Wilde about the US and England having everything in common except, of course, a language. Now, there was a number of toasts that you can see here with President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania after their speech. There were also 12 standing ovations in total. Now, what you see here at the top was the state dinner and was very light-hearted, and King Charles later gifted Trump with a bell from the HMS Trump submarine, which fought in the Battle of the Pacific during World War II. Below on this picture here, that's King Charles giving the address in Congress. Behind him is Vice President J.D. Vance there, and a number of Democrats and Republicans all in the House during that particular speech. Now, the state dinner was attended by members of the Trump administration, as well as notable figures from both sides of the Atlantic. But we'll discuss this more. But as you can see here, number of pictures, and King Charles, it seems, has been well received by both Democrats, Republicans, and US President Donald Trump. Okay, now let's go to our next story, which is leading on the Guardian website, and that's in relation to Hezbollah. Hezbollah drone strikes target Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon. So what we know, Hezbollah launched several drones on Tuesday, while Israel issued new displacement orders for South Lebanon and carried out airstrikes. Now, this is in the midst of the extended ceasefire, which is failing to stop fighting between the two sides. Hezbollah claimed Tuesday's attack injured several Israeli soldiers, but no confirmation was given from Israel's side on that. Israel also carried out a series of airstrikes on Lebanon also on Tuesday and ordered residents of 16 villages in South Lebanon to flee northwards. Now, Israeli airstrikes killed 18 people and wounded 88 more in Lebanon over the weekend, and that's actually according to the Lebanese Ministry of Health. But we'll keep you updated with all of this. We know that this fragile ceasefire, which was extended by 3 weeks, is not really having that much of an impact. But it's what Israel says they are still within their right to protect and go after terrorist organizations, which it has related to Hezbollah. Okay, now let's turn to our third story, our third headline this morning, which is on the New York Times in relation to Elon Musk. Elon Musk testifying at OpenAI trial accuses executives of stealing a charity. So what is this all about? Well, firstly, it's in regards to what has been going on between two big bosses of different companies. Now, Elon Musk says that when he first started AI, he wanted to do it as a charity. He didn't want it to be a for monetary gains. So Elon Musk actually took the stand during the second day of proceedings between SpaceX CEO, which is Elon Musk, and OpenAI CEO here, which you can see on my right. So Musk is accusing OpenAI on breaking their vow to keep it a non-profit organization. OpenAI has called the lawsuit actually baseless, and Musk previously sought $134 billion in damages personally, but is now asking for all ill-gotten gains to actually go to an OpenAI charity. So Musk was the first to give a testimony, which was largely dedicated on Tuesday to what he felt, what motivated him to start in relation to AI, and he wanted to serve AI as a counterweight to Google. Why is this significant, you might be asking? Well, the clash between the two is actually linked to two heavyweight boxers heading into the ring and figuring out who is bigger than the other. One observer compares it to King Kong taking on Godzilla, but that is just in regards to these two tech bosses. Now, what impact could this actually have? The trial on the broader tech industry, experts actually predict that the outcome of Musk versus Altman will be limited, at least from an AI safety perspective. So that one is there. Now we turn to our next story, and that should also now be on the Washington Post, and that's in regards to this shocking news that was released on Tuesday. The UAE to leave OPEC amid Hormuz oil crisis, a blow to Saudi Arabia. Okay, so what does this mean? We are going to discuss this in more detail with an expert guest to go into more detail, but just to give you a couple of top lines in relation to this story. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and OPEC is also the organization of mainly Gulf oil exporters, which for many decades controlled the price of crude oil by decreasing or increasing production and allocating quotas across its membership. It had a vital role in the 1970s oil crisis, which transformed global energy policy. Now, while OPEC production is dominated actually by Saudi Arabia, the UAE had the second highest spare production capacity, but OPEC quotas actually limited its production. Now, the timing of all of this definitely hints to what's going on in the Middle East in relation to the US-Iran war, as well as the pressure cooker in the Gulf has impacted the UAE's relationship with Iran. Now, as for OPEC, this is actually quite a big blow for them at a time when significant questions are being asked about its long-term coherence. And lastly, much depends on how Saudi Arabia will respond to this, so we'll definitely keep you informed as to how things turn throughout the course of the week. But Friday is the day that they've decided to no longer be a part of OPEC or OPEC Plus group. Okay, well, that's the press roundup for this morning. I'm now going to take a quick break, and when I return, I'll have the rest of the global stories. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the global stories. And we head over to tensions between the US and Iran, which remains high despite a ceasefire, with Washington rejecting Tehran's latest proposal and preparing tougher economic pressure. Military activity, sanctions and disrupted trade routes show the conflict's global impact is far from over.
US President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's latest proposal to resolve the ongoing conflict, expressing frustration that Tehran wants to delay discussions on its nuclear program. According to a US official, Iran suggested setting aside nuclear talks until after the war ends and shipping disputes are resolved. However, Trump insists nuclear issues must be addressed immediately. In a post on Truth Social, he claimed Iran told Washington it is in a state of collapse and is trying to stabilize its leadership while urging the reopening of the Hormuz Strait. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump has directed aides to prepare for a prolonged blockade of Iran. The strategy focuses on tightening pressure on Iran's economy and restricting oil exports by limiting shipping access to its ports. Officials say Trump sees this as less risky than renewed military strikes or disengagement. At the same time, the US government has imposed sanctions on 35 entities and individuals linked to Iran's shadow banking network. Authorities accuse them of moving tens of billions of dollars to bypass sanctions and support activities Washington labels as terrorism. In the Arabian Sea, United States Central Command said US Marines boarded a commercial vessel, the MV Blue Star 3. However, they later released it after confirming it was not heading to an Iranian port. Despite an April 8th ceasefire, Iran says it remains on a wartime footing. According to official statements, Iran continues to update targets, train forces, and produce new equipment, citing deep mistrust of the United States. Beyond the region, the Panama Canal Authority says the conflict is already shifting global trade routes, with increased traffic expected to continue until tensions in the Middle East ease.
And staying on those information in relation to the Middle East, pressures are escalating in southern Lebanon due to the fragile ceasefire there. Israel says it destroyed a major Hezbollah tunnel, adding it is intensifying operations, while Lebanon reports 5 killed in recent attacks.
2 Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have killed 5 people on Tuesday, including 3 rescuers who were hit while responding to the initial attack, according to officials. The second strike in Majd al-Zoun trapped the rescue workers under rubble. 2 Lebanese soldiers were also wounded. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the strikes as a new and blatant war crime committed by Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel has destroyed what he called a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel as fighting continues despite a US brokered ceasefire. Explosions and plumes of smoke were seen across the region, while evacuation warnings were issued to residents in several towns.
Today we blew up a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel. We are destroying their terrorist infrastructure, we are killing scores of terrorists, and we are not done yet. We are operating within the security zone south of the Litani, north of the Litani, in the Bekaa Valley, and in northern Lebanon. A few weeks ago I gave a directive for a special project to eliminate the drone threat. It will take time, but we will blow that up too.
Despite the ceasefire, clashes continue, with Israel carrying out strikes and Hezbollah launching drones and rockets. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, more than 2,500 people have been killed since early March, highlighting the fragility of the truce.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a vessel carrying what he called stolen grain out of Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories have arrived at an Israeli port. Israel has rejected the claims, with Foreign Minister dismissing them as Twitter diplomacy and saying no evidence has been provided. The Kremlin declined to comment, while Russia has repeatedly denied accusations of taking Ukrainian grain. Hungary's election winner Peter Magyar has proposed a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, signaling to discuss minority rights of ethnic Hungarians in the region. Magyar says talks in western Ukraine would focus on the rights of ethnic Hungarians in the Transcarpathy Area, a long-standing point of tension between the two countries. He says restoring language, cultural and education rights for around 150,000 ethnic Hungarians is key to rebuilding ties. Magyar argues progress on the issue could open a new chapter in bilateral relations and encourage those who fled the war to return. Turning back to the conflict in Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine have reported new drone attacks with an oil refinery hit on the Black Sea and residential areas damaged in Kyiv. Both sides continue to target sites far from the front line.
Thick black smoke rose over the Tuapse oil refinery after a Ukrainian drone strike triggered a major fire at the Black Sea facility. Local officials said the refinery had been hit for the 3rd time this month, with residents from nearby streets ordered to evacuate. More than 160 firefighters were deployed as emergency crews worked in what regional authorities described as extremely difficult conditions. Officials said no casualties were reported, but residents were urged to stay indoors, keep windows closed, and limit time outside because of smoke in the air. Earlier strikes on the same refinery caused an oil spill in the Black Sea, while residents reported black rain and an oily residue across parts of the city. The Kremlin accused Kiev of targeting oil facilities used for export operations and warned that such strikes risk further destabilizing global energy markets. Russian President Vladimir Putin said attacks on energy facilities were becoming more frequent and could have serious environmental consequences.
Drone strikes against civilian infrastructure are becoming more frequent. The latest example involves strikes on energy facilities in Tuapse, which could potentially lead to serious environmental consequences. However, the governor has reported that he is on the scene, or at least was there a couple of hours ago, and it appears there are no serious threats. People are dealing with the challenges they face on the ground.
Ukraine's military confirmed the strike, saying the refinery was part of Russia's military and economic potential. As Kiev expands attacks on energy sites, it says support Moscow's campaign. Meanwhile, Ukraine said Russian drones struck Kiev in daylight, injuring 2 people and damaging residential areas.
Staying on Russia, which is scaling back its military display at next month's Victory Day parade in Moscow, citing the situation linked to the conflict in Ukraine. The 9th of May event will mark the 81st anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. Instead of tanks and other hardware crossing Red Square, the parade will feature marching units from defense educational institutions and different branches of the armed forces. Russian Defense Ministry says it will also highlight personnel involved in what Moscow calls its special military operation. Now to the US, and US State Department said on Tuesday it will produce a limited number of commemorative passports bearing a portrait of President Donald Trump. The passports will be released as part of celebrations marking the 250th anniversary of the US Declaration of Independence in July, with no additional fee charged for those receiving one of the limited run editions. Renderings provided by the State Department show Trump's portrait on a page inside the passport opposite an image of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Staying in the US, and the US Senate has blocked a move to limit President Donald Trump from taking military action against Cuba without approval from Congress. Lawmakers voted 51-47, mostly along party lines. Republicans say the US is not in active conflict with Cuba, but Democratic Senator Tim Kaine argued that efforts to stop fuel shipments to the island should be seen as military action. The vote shows deep divisions in Washington over who should control the use of force. It comes as Trump hints that Cuba could be his next focus after recent actions in Venezuela and Iran. Turning to Venezuela, who is moving to revive parts of its oil sector as foreign energy companies look again at projects in the country. Italy's energy company Eni has signed an agreement with Venezuela's oil ministry and state-run oil and gas company to relaunch a crude project in the Orinoco Belt. The deal was signed in Caracas as part of a wider review of Venezuela's oil and gas contracts. Eni says its investment plan for the country is still being drafted and should be completed by the end of the year. To East Africa, and the United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher called for increased global support during a visit to Somalia, warning that funding shortfalls are undermining efforts to respond to growing humanitarian needs. He said the visit aimed to assess conditions on the ground and support ongoing response efforts. Fletcher indicated Somalia remains a priority and that efforts would be made to mobilize additional support. The country faces recurring crises driven by drought, conflict and food insecurity, leaving millions in the need of assistance.
I'm furious that resources are going elsewhere. Resources are going into conflict rather than dealing with the people in such great need here. You know, every day of this war is costing billions of dollars, which could save millions of lives globally and transform the lives of the people I'm meeting here.
Turning to West Africa, and Mali's military leader Assimi Goïta has said the situation in the nation is now under control. It follows on from insurgent attacks over the weekend that left multiple people dead in the country, including Defense Minister Sadio Kamara.
Following a series of deadly insurgent attacks across Mali over the weekend, the country's military leader Assimi Goïta has vowed to neutralise those responsible. West Africa's Al-Qaeda affiliate and a Tuareg-dominated separatist group targeted Mali's main army base and an area near Bamako's airport. They also pushed Russian troops supporting government forces out of the strategic northern town of Kidal. Goïta said the situation is under control and promised to continue rebuilding the West African nation.
As I speak, security measures have been stepped up. The situation is under control and search and clear operations, intelligence gathering and security operations are continuing. No violence, no intimidation, and certainly no desperate attempts at destabilization will be able to reverse the course of our country. The rebuilding will continue and our sovereignty will be strengthened. Our people, standing tall and resilient as ever, will emerge from this ordeal.
The statement comes after meeting Russian officials, following an earlier statement from Moscow that it is seeking stability in the West African country. Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maïga said the attacks were aimed at seizing power and dismantling the country's republican institutions.
What was the objective of this terrorist group? There were essentially three. One, to sow fear and doubt. We are not afraid, we will never doubt, and we will never be afraid. More than mere terrorist incidents, the enemy's objective was to seize power by dismantling the institutions of the Republic and putting an end to the process of rebuilding and building a new Mali.
The attacks, which led to the death of Defense Minister Sadio Kamara, have triggered a scramble for territory across Mali's vast desert north. This raises the prospect of significant gains by armed groups that have shown an increasing willingness to strike neighbouring countries and analysts say could eventually set their sights further afield.
Now to Central America, and Colombia's election campaign is intensifying under the shadow of renewed violence, with candidates offering sharply different visions of how to confront the country's long-standing security crisis.
The attack underscores the ongoing challenges in Colombia's southwest, where armed groups and drug trafficking networks continue to operate. With the first round of voting set for May 31st, security is emerging as a central issue, shaping both the campaign narrative and the choices facing voters. As the country reels from the violence, families have begun burying the victims. Loved ones gathered on Tuesday to bid farewell to 11 of those killed after forensic teams completed the identification and return of all 20 bodies. Meanwhile, Colombian authorities say they have arrested the alleged mastermind behind the attack. President Gustavo Petro announced the capture of José Alex Vitonco, also known as Mi Pez or David, a senior figure in the Dagoberto Ramos column of the EMC, a FARC dissident group. Vitonco is wanted on terrorism charges and is accused of orchestrating the recent wave of violence in the southwest, as well as playing a key role in regional drug trafficking networks. At campaign events in Bogotá, presidential candidates responded with sharply contrasting interpretations of the violence.
I want to express my solidarity with the people of Cauca and Valle del Cauca. The purpose of these actions is clear: to create fear and instability.
I came to tell Colombians that they have before them a brave woman and that I will lead the effort to restore security so Colombia can live without fear, and that we will not bend to violent groups. This country must understand once and for all that they are the ones who should be afraid, not Colombians in any corner of the country.
The attack underscores the ongoing challenges in Colombia's southwest, where armed groups and drug trafficking networks continue to operate. With With the first round of voting set for May 31st, security is emerging as a central issue, shaping both the campaign narrative and the choices facing voters.
Now to some music in motion, and Disney is reimagining some of its most iconic songs, not through sound, but through movement, bringing them to life in American Sign Language as part of a new project marking National Deaf History Month, offering audiences a new way to see and feel music.
We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no.
From We Don't Talk About Bruno,
I won't look too far ahead.
to The Next Right Thing and beyond. The performances are recreated using Deaf West theatre artists, combining animation with real signed performances to open up a new way of experiencing music. For director Hiram Osmond, the project is deeply personal.
So this project, this was something I had floating around back in my head for a while. My father's deaf. Really, you go back to the inspiration of it. Growing up, I didn't really learn sign language and felt like kind of had a barrier connecting with my dad. And so this came about as a way to connect and bring down barriers, especially between Disney animation and the deaf community.
The project challenges long-held assumptions about music in deaf audiences, something Deaf West Theatre says has never reflected reality.
People think that deaf people and music don't mix, but that's actually not true, and quite the opposite is true. Deaf people have been singing since day one. Since the beginning of recording sign language on film, you've had people signing songs like the Star Spangled Banner.
Behind the scenes, each song went through a detailed process, translating lyrics into sign language, rehearsing with performers, and capturing every movement on camera before transforming it into animation. For Osmond, the collaboration has also opened new creative possibilities within the animation industry.
The crew itself was most asked to be on this project. There was just a passion for it. I don't know sign language, but this looks wonderful. I want to be involved. And I think along the process, again, with Deaf West and looking at and working with, people started to get it. I mean, look, I'm not fluent in sign language, but I've come a long way, right, DJ? I've been learning. I understand a little bit more now.
Thank goodness. We looked at the original movie, we looked at the song many, many times. We looked at the lyrics and broke those down, and then we developed translations with the actors, and then marked those translations, rehearsed with the actors, came into the filming room, and then filmed each movement, each camera angle, and had to work through what works and what doesn't work on every shot. After that process, I have to be very thankful to Hiram to give me permission to give him so many notes.
The project took 4 years to develop and is now streaming on Disney+.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's how you do it in British Sign Language. So I know a little bit, but not a lot, but that looks fantastic. Now we're going to take a very quick break. When I return, I will be taking a closer look at the regional headlines, and I'll be joined by a in-studio guest later for some more information. Stay with me. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's go to the stories in the region, and first we head over to Turkey. Now there was the latest meeting between Turkey and Armenia on the potential launch of the Kars-Gümrü railway line marks a noteworthy development in long-stalled normalization process. In this context, the emerging dialogue between Ankara and Yerevan may be viewed both as an opportunity and as a variable, introducing new complexity into an already delicate equilibrium. Joining me now to discuss this further is Associate Professor Orkan Valiev, Head of Department in Kazakh University. Welcome this morning.
Good morning.
My first question is, to what extent can the proposed reopening of the Kars-Gümrü railway be understood as a purely economic initiative, and what underlying political motivations might be shaping it at this stage?
Good morning again. This is another the positive the step within the framework, the uncertainty in the region in terms of the war around the neighboring countries. So this is a great the historic progress which has been mentioned, the U.S. Embassy in Yerevan. So the U.S. side identified the process, the historic progress towards the normalization between Turkey and Azerbaijan. First of all, the main things that, yes, as we discussed many times, we have the political will in terms of the high level of the leadership. The both countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia, specifically Azerbaijan, which got the historic victory, deliberated its invaded territories and so on. But however, announced, declared its the positive, the interest, the goal towards the normalization, the peace process. So that's brought us to this process. And also, Azerbaijan has the political, the will and interest, normalization between Turkey and Azerbaijan that, as you mentioned, would facilitate and also contribute to the establishment of the economic cooperation among the neighboring, the regional countries. So which is the critical to establish the good relations between the three countries. As we know, Azerbaijan opened the territory land for the transformation of the goods from its territory to Armenia and other things. And also the Turkish Airlines launched the flights from Istanbul to Yerevan as well. So this is another the historic moment that actually the meeting was held in the strategic point, the far east part of Turkey, which has the relations with Azerbaijan and Armenia as well, and also
Mr. Valiev,
strategy.
Sorry, I know we don't have much time, so I want to quickly ask you as many questions as possible. My next point, because you kind of covered a plethora of things right there, how might then the progress in Turkish-Armenian normalization impact the dynamics of Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process?
Actually, the normalization between Turkey and Armenia will facilitate, of course, will contribute to the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, because the meeting which was held in the Kars yesterday aimed to rehabilitation and also reopening the Kars, the railways between two countries, and also reopening the land between two countries for the economic the cooperation and the relation, which will the breakthrough towards the peace process and also normalization between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So which is a critical issue because and also Azerbaijan has the interest in that issue.
And what strategic calculations are guiding Turkey in pursuing engagement with Armenia, particularly in light of its close alliance with Azerbaijan?
Yeah, of course. Turkey from the starting point, its position was clear and is clear. The main requirement that we discussed many times that the recognition of the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and so on. So, but we have the positive the reaction from Armenian Armenian government in terms of that issue, that they promised that they will make amendments and so on. So in Washington, just last August, the summit where that they signed the respective documents. So therefore, Turkey's position is strategic, and because of that, the developments, Turkey started to how to discuss the process normalization with Armenia, and also the President Erdogan appointed a specific envoy for this issue, Armenian side as well. So therefore, Turkey's position is very positive and also strategic towards the peace process between two countries.
And do you think the activation of this railway corridor could alter regional transit patterns in ways that could affect existing or planned routes involving Azerbaijan? So if so, how would such a shift be interpreted?
Yep, of course. For example, the Turkish Foreign Minister, Mr. Hakan Fidan, on his interview the January, he emphasized the strategic importance of implementation of the Zengezur corridor, right? So therefore, we can see the meeting between Armenia and Turkey in terms of the reopening and rehabilitation of the railroad, in terms of the Zengezur corridor as well, because this is a great part of the economic the process. So that, for example, another example, the Prime Minister Pashinyan, right after the summit in Washington, said that this process will make the region a transit hub that will bring the economic leverage and privilege to us. Therefore, I think, yes, this is another positive side that we have.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, Mr. Valiev, and your insights on that. Thank
Pleasure.
you. Now, music, parades and celebration define the second day of the International Regatta in Mykshave as athletes and visitors gathered for the ongoing event. Let's take a look.
The President's Cup 2026 has continued with a dynamic program as the second day of the event marked the official start of the International Regatta. The event is dedicated to 103rd anniversary of national leader Haydar Aliyev, and the second day also started with participants paying respect to his monument. A grand parade followed with teams marching through the streets carrying their national flags as large crowds gathered to cheer them on. Music and celebration filled the city, creating a festive atmosphere. In the evening, the program continued with a concert by a well-known Azerbaijani music group, drawing another large crowd and adding to the excitement. The athletes also attended the concert while sharing their journey with us.
And we went to training camps, and we prepared well for this, and we're strong, and we think we can do this.
In Turkey, we were in camps like 6 months for this race, and Slovakia. So we trained hard, and we hope we turn back home with a lot of medals.
I think I have good preparation in my home country, in my home club. It's Spartak Modrzany, it's the best club in Prague. Yeah, I really enjoy it here. The atmosphere is good and everything here is perfect.
Around 20 countries and more than 100 participants are taking part in the International Regatta, all preparing for the competitions. İlknur Seydemirovic, Zohrab Shirinov reports from Mingachevir, Azerbaijan for A News.
UNICEF is warning that Afghanistan could face a growing workforce crisis as restrictions on girls' education begin to affect the country's future teachers, doctors and public servants. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
UNICEF says Afghanistan is facing what it describes as a dual crisis, losing trained women professionals while also preventing the next generation of girls from replacing them. In its new analysis, the agency says women representation in the civil service has fallen from 21% to 17.7% between 2023 and 2025. More than 1 million Afghan girls have been denied secondary education since the Taliban authorities imposed the ban in September 2021. UNICEF warns that if the ban remains in place until 2030, more than 2 million girls will have been deprived of education beyond primary school. The agency says Afghanistan could lose up to 20,000 female teachers and 5,400 female health care workers by 2030. It says the education sector is already feeling the pressure, with the number of female teachers in basic education falling by more than 9%. From nearly 73,000 in 2022 to around 66,000 in 2024. The health sector could also suffer as many women in Afghanistan rely on female medical staff. UNICEF says the restrictions are also costing Afghanistan around $84 million a year in lost economic output. Afghan authorities have not yet commented on the UNICEF analysis. However, UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell has urged the de facto authorities to lift the ban on secondary education for girls, saying Afghanistan cannot afford to lose future teachers, nurses, doctors, midwives and social workers. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
The president of Pakistan is in China on a week-long official visit aimed at deepening strategic ties and expanding economic cooperation. A News' Maknoor Makdoom picked up the story.
Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari is on a week-long official visit to China focused on deepening strategic ties and expanding economic cooperation. Since arriving, he has held high-level meetings with Chinese leaders and senior officials and has also engaged with provincial authorities and industry representatives to explore regional-level collaboration. During the visit, both sides have signed a series of agreements and MOUs spanning agriculture, desalination, green technology, and industrial cooperation, showing efforts to widen the scope of engagement beyond traditional sectors. Talks have centered on trade expansion, investment facilitation, and advancing infrastructure and connectivity under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. There has also been an emphasis on cooperation in areas such as renewable energy, food security, and technology transfer, reflecting evolving economic priorities. In the coming days, Zardari is expected to continue meeting with senior Chinese leadership, corporate stakeholders, and financial institutions, with a focus on accelerating key CPEC projects, enhancing energy partnerships, and boosting industrial and export-oriented collaboration. Regional and global issues, including Middle East stability with the ongoing US-Iran war, have also been discussed in general terms, with both sides reiterating support for dialogue and peaceful resolution. Further agreements and joint statements are anticipated as the visit progresses, reinforcing the long-standing all-weather strategic partnership between the two countries. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
Turning back to the region, and as Europe looks to strengthen energy security and transport links across the continent, regional leaders are gathering in Croatia for talks on connectivity and strategic cooperation. Our correspondent Adam Morrow reports from Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is attending a multi-nation summit which kicked off Tuesday as part of the so-called 3 Seas initiative. Held in the Croatian city of Dubrovnik, the two-day gathering brings together leaders from Central and Eastern Europe, along with a number of partner countries. Launched in 2016, the 3 Seas initiative is a regional platform comprising 12 European Union member states located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas. The initiative aims to boost north-south connectivity across the region, focusing on infrastructure, energy security, and digital networks. It has gained increasing geopolitical importance in recent years, particularly as European countries seek to diversify energy supplies and reduce reliance on traditional supply routes. According to diplomatic sources, Fidan is expected to emphasize Turkey's role as a key transit hub linking Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. He is also expected to stress the importance of efficient supply chains and alternative energy corridors, especially given recent disruptions in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Notably, this marks the first time Turkey is taking part in the annual summit as a full-fledged strategic partner. The initiative's other strategic partners include Germany, Japan, Spain, and the United States. Officials say Ankara's high-level participation reflects its growing interest in aligning with European connectivity projects. Fidan is also expected to hold several bilateral meetings with top officials from regional countries on the summit's sidelines. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Tensions between Georgia and the European Union have sharpened after the EU's ambassador to Tbilisi was summoned by the Foreign Ministry over remarks on the country's European path. The dispute adds fresh strain to Georgia's EU ambitions. Nini Nikolashvili has more from Tbilisi.
A high-level diplomatic dispute has intensified after EU Ambassador Pavel Herchinsky was summoned to Georgia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tbilisi, a move widely viewed as a formal signal of protest following his recent public statements. The summoning was directly linked to remarks made by Herchinsky in Brussels during the opening of the Georgia in Focus exhibition at the European External Action Service. In his speech, the ambassador warned that Georgia is no longer on the right path toward European integration, arguing that the current authorities appear to be shifting toward an alternative, more authoritarian model. He further framed Georgia's situation as a historic crossroads, cautioning that decisions made in the near future could determine whether the country remains aligned with European democratic value or risks returning to what he described as a dark past, referencing periods marked by instability, civil conflict, poverty, and corruption. The ambassador also called on Georgian society not to lose hope, emphasizing that the European Union remains ready to support the country if it recommits to cooperation. These remarks drew a strong reaction from the Georgian government. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Minister Makabachorishvili told the ambassador that such statements undermine trust and damage the foundations of the partnership with the European Union. She stressed that messaging which evokes fears of instability or regression contributes to polarization within Georgian society. Government representatives also interpreted the ambassador's references to a possible return to past turmoil as inappropriate, with officials suggesting that such framing could be seen as encouraging alarm or presenting a narrative of potential chaos. But Orishvili reiterated that Georgia remains open to constructive dialogue but expects a respectful approach from Brussels. She also argued that the current pause in engagement is the result of decisions taken by the European Union, pointing to an earlier move by the EU Council to suspend dialogue. The European Union, in its response, maintained that Georgia's candidate status remains in place, but emphasized that further progress depends on concrete reforms and alignment with democratic standards, including rule of law and human rights. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
It's now time for a break. When I return, I'll have a full update on their latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Don't go anywhere. Hello, you're watching Daybreak live on A News, and if you're just joining me, I'm here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the morning headlines. Donald Trump and King Charles toast to a historic bond at the White House state dinner. Hezbollah drone strikes target Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon, and Netanyahu claims he's destroyed Hezbollah tunnel. And Ukraine strikes Russia's oil refinery. Putin says attacks are intensifying on civilian targets. Now let's take a look at the stories making the front page this morning, and we head first to Al Jazeera and what they're covering in relation to Lebanon. Now, Lebanon's Prime Minister slams Israel's war crimes as attack kills 3 rescue workers. So what we know is Hezbollah launched several drones at Israeli soldiers in South Lebanon on Tuesday, while Israel issued new displacement orders for South Lebanon and carried out airstrikes as well. Now, the extended ceasefire has failed to stop the fighting between the two sides, and Hezbollah claimed that Tuesday's attack injured several Israeli soldiers, but there's been no confirmation from Israel in relation to that. However, Israel also carried out a series of airstrikes on Lebanon on Tuesday and ordered residents of 16 villages in the southern part of Lebanon to flee northwards. Now, Israeli airstrikes have killed 18 people so far and wounded roughly 88 more in Lebanon over the weekend, and that's according to the Lebanese Ministry of Health. But we'll provide you with more information in regards to that. We know that the ceasefire is on very shaky ground at this moment, and both sides seem to still be continuing their aggression each day. Okay, now let's move to the next story, which is quite upbeat for the morning. It's on the BBC website, and a £20 million mystery gift buys London Zoo new hospital where you can watch vets work. So it's very much a real-life Dr. Dolittle type of venture, but visitors to London Zoo will now soon be able to watch live veterinary procedures inside a state-of-the-art new animal hospital. Viewing the gallery will show everything from penguin health to checks to ultrasounds to pregnant aardvarks, as you've got here, a little mini mouse there. The health centre has been made possible by the zoo's largest ever gift from an anonymous donor. The Zoological Society of London, which manages the zoo, hopes the new centre will help demonstrate the enduring value of its conservation work. Now, just to add here, as you can see, even this going into a scanning machine. There you are, an MRI for, it looks like a gorilla there. Now, they say that it aims to bring together advanced veterinary care, scientific research, professional training and public engagement under one roof. It will also investigate how diseases could spread from animals to humans as well. So that's 20 million well spent, I'm sure, for those in London who will be able to see some of these very much real life as it goes on, veterinary care for them to take a look at veterinary procedures. Okay, now let's go to our next headline, and that's on CNN's website, and this is everywhere and will continue to be so. King Charles' historic speech to Congress and state dinner with Trump. Now, King Charles has addressed Congress, which was on earlier on Tuesday, and said that the UK and US partnership was more important than ever. And I just want to highlight some of the key takeaways, one of which was an acknowledgement of uncertainty. There was a major applause from the Democrats on the executive power is subject to checks and balances, is what King Charles said, and a nod to NATO and the transatlantic alliance. Also, within all of his speeches, there was no mention of Epstein victims, so staying very much far away from that particular subject and issue. And there was a touch of royal humour throughout as well. King Charles also made a line that from the Oscar Wilde about the US and England having everything in common except, of course, a language. There were 12 standing ovations in total, and then at the state dinner, King Charles also gifted US President Donald Trump with a bell from HMS Trump submarine, which fought in the Battle of the Pacific during World War II. But let's go to this particular report with more information. Our Washington correspondent, Ube Shabanda, actually brings us some more information.
The King of the United Kingdom, Charles III, received quite the welcome on Tuesday here in Washington, D.C., as President Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for the British sovereign, who then spoke to a joint session of Congress and then joined President Trump and the First Lady, as well as a slew of dignitaries, for a state dinner at the White House. King Charles has a strong bond with President Trump, and he was seeking to repair frayed transatlantic ties between London and Washington. Speaking to members of Congress, King Charles praised the special connection between the United Kingdom and the United States, calling it a, quote, treasured friendship. And he added that history has known no more powerful a force than the combination of American patriotism and British pride. President Trump echoed the sentiment on the importance of the historical partnership, remarking that as the U.S. prepares to celebrate the 250th anniversary of its declaration of independence from British colonial rule, that, quote, it's only natural that Americans begin this commemoration by paying tribute to the transcendent bond with the nation that Thomas Jefferson himself called our, quote, mother country. The king also touted bilateral trade and investment ties and urged the U.S. to remain in the NATO military alliance, stressing the importance of working with allies to help defend Ukraine in its ongoing war with Russia. President Trump said that Americans have no closer friends than the British, and he highlighted how the shared Anglo-Saxon heritage with the UK and common history helped make America the nation that it is today. Trump's relationship with the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, recently took a nosedive as Trump accused Starmer of not sufficiently supporting the US military operation against Iran's nuclear and missile program. But the mood was decidedly jovial here in Washington as King Charles kicked off his multi-day visit to the US. President Trump underscored how valued that relationship with Great Britain was for Americans, saying, quote, that American patriots today can sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty, only because our colonial ancestors first sang, God Save the King. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington.
Pressures are escalating in southern Lebanon during the fragile ceasefire. Israel says it destroyed a major Hezbollah tunnel, adding it is intensifying operations, while Lebanon reports 5 killed in recent attacks.
US President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's latest proposal to resolve the ongoing conflict. expressing frustration that Tehran wants to delay discussions on its nuclear program. According to a US official, Iran suggested setting aside nuclear talks until after the war ends and shipping disputes are resolved. However, Trump insists nuclear issues must be addressed immediately. In a post on Truth Social, he claimed Iran told Washington it is in a state of collapse and is trying to stabilize its leadership while urging the reopening of the Hormuz Strait. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump has directed aides to prepare for a prolonged blockade of Iran. The strategy focuses on tightening pressure on Iran's economy and restricting oil exports by limiting shipping access to its ports. Officials say Trump sees this as less risky than renewed military strikes or disengagement. At the same time, the US government has imposed sanctions on 35 entities and individuals linked to Iran's shadow banking network. Authorities accuse them of moving tens of billions of dollars to bypass sanctions and support activities Washington labels as terrorism. In the Arabian Sea, United States Central Command said US Marines boarded a commercial vessel, the MV Blue Star 3. However, they later released it after confirming it was not heading to an Iranian port. Despite an April 8th ceasefire, Iran says it remains on a wartime footing. According to official statements, Iran continues to update targets, train forces, and produce new equipment, citing deep mistrust of the United States. Beyond the region, the Panama Canal Authority says the conflict is already shifting global trade routes, with increased traffic expected to continue until tensions in the Middle East ease.
Staying on that, and that was actually in relation to US and Iran. My actual cue before then was on Lebanon, which is the next story to come up in regards to the fragile ceasefire and Israel saying it destroyed a major Hezbollah tunnel, adding to intensifying operations. Now let's take a look at this report.
2 Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have killed 5 people on Tuesday, including 3 rescuers who were hit while responding to the initial attack, according to officials. The second strike in Majd al-Zoun trapped the rescue workers under rubble. 2 Lebanese soldiers were also wounded. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the strikes as a new and blatant war crime committed by Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel has destroyed what he called a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel as fighting continues despite a US-brokered ceasefire. Explosions and plumes of smoke were seen across the region, while evacuation warnings were issued to residents in several towns.
Today we blew up a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel. We are destroying their terrorist infrastructure, we are killing scores of terrorists, and we are not done yet. We are operating within the security zone south of the Litani, north of the Litani, in the Bekaa Valley, and in northern Lebanon. A few weeks ago I gave a directive for a special project to eliminate the drone threat. It will take time, but we will blow that up too.
Despite the pause, clashes continue, with Israel carrying out strikes and Hezbollah launching drones and rockets. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, more than 2,500 people have been killed since early March, highlighting the fragility of the ceasefire.
Staying in the Middle East, and the United Arab Emirates has announced it is leaving the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC for short, along with the wider group of partners known as OPEC Plus, effective from Friday this week. Joining me now to discuss this major blow to OPEC and what the UAE exit really means is founder and CEO of Global Defense Insight, Umair Aslam. Welcome to the program this morning.
Thank you.
My first question in all of this that has got a lot of people scratching their heads is how would the UAE leaving OPEC alter the group's stability to control global oil supply and prices?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to the session. If the UAE will leave the OPEC, the group's unity would weaken to some extent. But the Saudi Arabia's still lead the OPEC, but the collective decision making of OPEC would become more difficult. For example, this could reduce the effectiveness of production cuts as well as the supply management. As a result, global oil prices may become more volatile and harder to stabilize. So that's why the UAE's announcement of OPEC is very disturbing for the region.
And what strategic motivations do you think might have driven the UAE to exit OPEC during this time, despite long-standing membership?
Well, can you please repeat your question?
Yes, what do you think has caused or motivated the UAE to leave the OPEC membership, considering how long they've been a part of it?
Well, the UAE has been expanding its oil production capacity significantly in recent years. We have saw that they are manufacturing new plants, new refinery, so they are expanding their capabilities. Well, it may want greater freedom to produce and export without strict OPEC quotas, because OPEC has a very strict quotas regarding the oil exports. So that's why uh, UAE considered this act, and this would also allow it to maximize revenue as well as to strengthen its market position. It also aligns with its broader goal of pursuing an independent economic and foreign policy. So that's why they want to leave the OPEC to become more oil independent state.
Some might actually
Oil
attribute
independent state.
Yes, some might actually attribute that to what's going on in Iran and the US Iran war. Do you think that had any bearings to the UAE deciding to leave now at this particular time?
Well, a full domino effect is unlikely, but it could increase internal pressure within OPEC, because OPEC is a country of all the oil producing countries, maximum oil producing countries. So some members may start questioning the fairness of production quotas. For example, Saudi Arabia will raise a question, maybe other countries will raise a question. Smaller producers, in particular, may push for more flexibility. And however, major players like Saudi Arabia are expected to maintain the control of the overall OPEC quotas.
Well, just on that, do you think that this exit could trigger other countries to also decide, and partners to decide to leave it, or partners like Saudi Arabia or Russia? Do you think it could have a domino effect?
No, I don't think so. It will happen because Saudi Arabia still maintains its you can say its autonomy over the OPEC, because it's a very large oil producing country. But the smaller countries might raise the questions on the fairness of the production quotas.
And how do you think global energy markets will respond to this, especially in major consuming regions like China and India, respond to this short or long-term situation?
Well, in short term, market may react with uncertainty as well as the price fluctuations. If the UAE, after leaving the OPEC, if the UAE enhances its production capabilities as well as the oil exports, global oil supply could rise. This may put forward pressure on the prices in the international market. So we can expect that the oil prices may rise in the shorter term as well as the longer term. In the long term, countries like China and India may benefit from stable and diversified supply.
And what do you think the impact would have on energy transition and investment in renewables versus fossil fuels?
Well, lower oil prices could reduce the urgency for renewable energy investments, but when the prices will increase in the international markets, consumers have to buy the oil at a much higher price. So that will obviously this will trigger the investments on the renewable energy resources. But on the other hand, we have saw that the multiple states are already working on the renewable energy resources. For example, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and many other countries are working. In Europe, we have also saw, and in America, uh, all these nations are working on renewable energy resources. Some country may reduce their reliability on the you can say oil.
Yeah. Okay. And how might this reshape geopolitical alliances and influence the global energy governance?
Well, an exit would weaken the OPEC's influence in global energy governance. countries may increasingly focus on bilateral and regional energy agreements. This would reduce independence on large multilateral organizations like OPEC. So you can say that the dependence on OPEC will reduce. Overall, the global energy system would become more fragmented but flexible.
And what might the United States do in regards to this? Do they welcome a UAE exit from OPEC? And how could this shift benefit its economic and geopolitical interests?
Okay. Well, United States of America openly supports the open and competitive energy markets, and you already mentioned that they appreciated and they supported this announcement. Well, a weaker OPEC could reduce its ability to control global oil prices. So you can say that the weakened OPEC means that you can't control the oil prices overall, because OPEC is the main body that controls the prices of oils as well, along with quotas. Well, this may lead to more affordable energy for United States of America's consumers and allies. It also aligns with the US geopolitical interests in limited cartel influence. So that's why USA is supporting this announcement, and actually the UAE is leaving the OPEC is very beneficial for the United States of America as well as its allies.
Well, thank you for explaining that. Just very finally, it's quite quick that this particular exit is happening. They announced it on Tuesday. They said the last is effective from the 1st of May. Why such a short period of time?
Well, I have already mentioned that they have been planning this from since a long time. They have been focusing on their independent oil production sites, oil refineries. So they have been planning this since a long time. But when they saw that the oil prices are rising in already in the market, so that's why they announced it yesterday, and they might leave on the 1st of May.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Aslam, and for your insights. It's been very helpful this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we turn to the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. And Russia, both countries have reported new drone attacks with an oil refinery hit on the Black Sea and residential areas damaged in Kyiv. Both sides continue to target sites far from the front line. Let's go to this report.
Thick black smoke rose over the Tuapse oil refinery after a Ukrainian drone strike triggered a major fire at the Black Sea facility. Local officials said the refinery had been hit for the 3rd time this month, with residents from nearby streets ordered to evacuate. More than 160 firefighters were deployed as emergency crews worked in what regional authorities described as extremely difficult conditions. Officials said no casualties were reported, but residents were urged to stay indoors, keep windows closed, and limit time outside because of smoke in the air. Earlier strikes on the same refinery caused an oil spill in the Black Sea, while residents reported black rain and an oily residue across parts of the city. The Kremlin accused Kiev of targeting oil facilities used for export operations and warned that such strikes risk further destabilizing global energy markets. Russian President Vladimir Putin said attacks on energy facilities were becoming more frequent and could have serious environmental consequences.
Drone strikes against civilian infrastructure are becoming more frequent. The latest example involves strikes on energy facilities in Tuapse, which could potentially lead to serious environmental consequences. However, the governor has reported that he is on the scene, or at least was there a couple of hours ago, and it appears there are no serious threats. People are dealing with the challenges they face on the ground.
Ukraine's military confirmed the strike, saying the refinery was part of Russia's military and economic potential. As Kiev expands attacks on energy sites, it says support Moscow's campaign. Meanwhile, Ukraine said Russian drones struck Kiev in daylight, injuring 2 people and damaging residential areas.
Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a vessel carrying what he has called stolen grain out of Russian-occupied Ukrainian territories have arrived at an Israeli port. Israel has rejected the claims, with Foreign Minister dismissing them as Twitter diplomacy and saying no evidence has been provided. The Kremlin declined to comment, while Russia has repeatedly denied accusations of taking Ukrainian grain. The US Senate has blocked a move to limit US President Donald Trump from taking military action against Cuba without approval from Congress. Lawmakers voted 51 to 47, mostly along party lines. Republicans said the US is not in active conflict with Cuba, but Democratic Senator Tim Kaine argued that efforts to stop fuel shipments to the island should be seen as military action. The vote shows deep divisions in Washington over who should control the use of force. It comes as Trump hints that Cuba could be his next focus after recent actions in Venezuela and Iran. Now to West Africa, and Mali's military leader Assimi Goïta has said the situation in the nation is now under control. It follows on from insurgent attacks over the weekend that left multiple people dead in the country, including Defense Minister Sadio Kamara.
Following a series of deadly insurgent attacks across Mali over the weekend, the country's military leader Assimi Goïta has vowed to neutralize those responsible. West Africa's Al-Qaeda affiliate and a Tuareg-dominated separatist group targeted Mali's main army base and an area near Bamako's airport. They also pushed Russian troops supporting government forces out of the strategic northern town of Kidal. Goïta said the situation is under control and promised to continue rebuilding the West African nation.
As I speak, security measures have been stepped up. The situation is under control and search and clear operations, intelligence gathering and security operations are continuing. No violence, no intimidation, and certainly no desperate attempts at destabilization will be able to reverse the course of our country. The rebuilding will continue and our sovereignty will be strengthened. Our people, standing tall and resilient as ever, will emerge from this ordeal.
The statement comes after meeting Russian officials, following an earlier statement from Moscow that it is seeking stability in the West African country. Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maïga said the attacks were aimed at seizing power and dismantling the country's republican institutions.
What was the objective of this terrorist group? There were essentially three. One, to sow fear and doubt. We are not afraid, we will never doubt, and we will never be afraid. More than mere terrorist incidents, the enemy's objective was to seize power by dismantling the institutions of the Republic and putting an end to the process of rebuilding and building a new Mali.
The attacks, which led to the death of Defense Minister Sadio Kamara, have triggered a scramble for territory across Mali's vast desert north. This raises the prospect of significant gains by armed groups that have shown an increasing willingness to strike neighbouring countries and analysts say could eventually set their sights further afield.
You're watching Daybreak on A News. Don't go anywhere after this quick break. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Jani. Now let's head over to what's going on in the UK. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has avoided a parliamentary probe over claims he misled MPs on Lord Peter Mandelson's appointment after the Commons rejected a Tory motion. Our correspondent Zainab Faridze has more.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will not face a parliamentary investigation over claims he misled MPs about the appointment of Lord Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador. The House of Commons has voted 335 to 223 against a Conservative-led motion to trigger an inquiry, giving the Prime Minister a clear victory. The move, led by Conservative leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, sought to refer Starmer to the Privileges Committee, the same body that can investigate whether MPs have misled Parliament. If the committee had found Starmer deliberately misled Parliament, he would have been expected to resign. But after a coordinated effort by Number 10, most Labour MPs backed the government and rejected the proposal. A small number of Labour MPs, particularly from the left of the party, had argued that Starmer should refer himself to the committee to clear his name, but they were ultimately outnumbered. The controversy centers on Starmer's claims that the appointment process followed full procedures and that no pressure was placed on Foreign Office officials. He has strongly denied misleading Parliament. Starmer has also said he would not have made the appointment had he been aware of the full details, adding that key information had been withheld from him. Peter Mandelson was appointed to the role in December 2024, but was later dismissed after it emerged his links to Jeffrey Epstein were more extensive than previously known. The case has intensified scrutiny over the vetting process for senior diplomatic appointments. The Prime Minister criticised the attempt to launch an investigation, calling it a political stunt timed to influence voters ahead of local and regional elections on May 7. He ordered Labour lawmakers to oppose the inquiry, a move that helped secure its decisive rejection. But Kılıçdaroğlu said that was a sign of weakness, arguing the Prime Minister had to rely on party discipline to avoid further scrutiny. Jenna Ferizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Staying in the UK, and conservation charity Zoological Society has announced plans to open a new wildlife health centre at London Zoo. The £20 million centre will allow visitors to watch vets treat animals in real time. This could include penguin health checks and even post-mortems. London Zoological Society says the project will also showcase the work of its scientists and help the public better understand wildlife, health and conservation. The charity was founded in 1826. It opened the world's first scientific zoo and has played a major role in veterinary and conservation work ever since.
Yeah, I don't know if they're being a bit odd to me.
Wow, I'd love to see them treat animals in real time. And as I mentioned earlier in the press review, it was actually the £20 million was donated by an anonymous donor. Well, there you have it. That is all your news for this morning. I'll be back tomorrow to give you the latest headlines, but please stay tuned to A News for further updates throughout the day. Take care.